Hey everybody, it's Richard Thomas, and welcome back to the Eyes Open podcast, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. I'm with my co-host, Amber Nordstrom.
Hey there.
And Lauren Atkinson.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Where we last left off on the previous episode, we were talking about school indoctrination and where we've come from the 1800s, 1900s, and now we are in 2024. And Amber, I believe you were talking about how it's right in our faces how the education system is performing, and it's not good.
They aren't hiding anything anymore. The agenda is full out in our faces. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think it's pretty disgusting. I think during the pandemic, we saw when kids started going back, matriculating back into the schoolrooms, I think parents were more wide awake.
Yeah.
And they were more discerning about what their kids were bringing home, whereas before, probably not so much. But the pandemic really shook people up. Mm-hmm. And I think once they got back into the school system, parents began to look over the shoulders of their children and see exactly what their kids were reading, what their kids were actually being taught. And these parents started showing up at the school board meetings, and they weren't too happy.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
Let's check out this clip real quick and see what I mean.
Lead this district, protect our children, or get out of the way.
During a raucous meeting, parents brought signs and openly cheered, as well as booed those defending and those adamantly opposed to adult-themed books available to Keller ISD students.
And please stop the sexual grooming of our children by these types of books and illustrations.
It is my job to teach my kids about sex. It's y'all's job to help teach about reading, writing, and arithmetic.
That's right.
A sexually explicit comic called Genderqueer was pulled last month from an online Keller ISD library database.
This is unbelievable.
State Republican leaders, including Governor Abbott, have called for an audit of all school library books.
This is
and
in
the
Texas,
prosecution
y'all.
of those school employees who allow underage students to access them. Parents who brought a wagon full of some school library books they call pornographic support that idea.
You want to know what it has in it? I'm not going to read it, but I'll tell you. Sodomy, rape, and drug use.
But another group of parents called those comments homophobic and say opponents want to censor material that fosters healthy adolescent development.
Well, we know who
Why
they're
are
voting
we
for.
so concerned about the books in the libraries when many of these same kids
Well,
have
she's wearing a mask.
access
She wears a mask.
to
Yeah.
way worse contents on their
With a
phones and their
rainbow
TVs?
holder. Like she's
Absolutely.
Having
serious.
raised my boys in what amounts
Yeah.
to be a homophobic suburb, I ask that you really think of the students before you start pulling books off the bookshelves.
Yeah.
Those
keep the
very
pornography
books
in the
allow
schools. Why
students who
not?
identify in the LGBTQIA alphabet to see themselves reflected in those
Definitely.
pages.
The school board later explained to the crowd how it gets its books for its libraries. They say librarians look for age-appropriate material, but administrators have placed a moratorium on any adult fiction until it can review as many as 10 to 15,000 books. In Keller tonight,
That
Jamie Miles.
is insane.
It's insane. You know what it reminds me of? The other side that's defending this depravity of hypersexualizing innocence is a reprobate mind. It's reprobate.
That's where we've come.
It gets to the point where you no longer see darkness. The longer you turn around from God and you go the opposite direction, and anything goes. If you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing.
Right.
And the Lord allows you to become reprobate. And really what that means is you see no darkness at all. Anything goes. And there was only one person in the Bible that ever came back to the Lord when they were reprobate, and it was Nebuchadnezzar.
That's right.
Nobody else did.
That's right.
So once the Lord allows you to go there, you're gone.
It's dangerous. Yeah, we're kind of at that crossroads. I think we have moved, and I know you both of you have seen the footage. I've seen the footage that's, kind of gone viral on social media of parents taking young children, I'm talking about 10, 11, 12-year-olds, to gay pride events.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I, came from, I had dipped my toe in that community and was
Say
part of
it.
that community.
Yeah.
And so as an adult, I would go to those events, and those are adult events.
Inappropriate.
They're inappropriate, but they're for adults. And if you're an adult, you have free will and you choose that is your life. You choose that.
Right.
But these children don't have choices in the matter. They're just kind of going along with how their parents are raising them. And to see little boys and little girls going and watching half-naked men dancing on floats in the streets of San Francisco or Los Angeles or even right here in Atlanta, Georgia, it's absurd because as children, their minds are so pliable, and no, children should not have the right to choose their gender or what they want to be. It's the way of the parents to teach them right from wrong. But we have a whole group of indoctrinated parents that are letting children teach the parents, not the other way around.
And what's worse is the higher ups, or whatever you want to call them, they know how impressionable children are.
Oh, yeah,
and
they do.
know the age of adolescence and
They
how
do.
the mind is being completely conformed
Oh, yeah.
and molded and shaped. And they are prying on that
Oh, yeah.
just to meet and go ahead forward with their agenda.
Oh, it's insane. And I think it really goes back to the big picture. Like, they want to dismantle the Western way of doing things, which was the family unit initially. They want to dismantle morality, because when you have children that are in free fall, where they have no idea what their identity is or who they are as humans, as men, as women, then you strip them of the rational thinking that takes to actually decide between wrong and right, and it becomes easy to program those type of people to do what the government says.
Well, this has been on since the beginning of time. I mean, biblically, let's just get spiritual here. This is a spiritual issue. And the number one thing the enemy does always, because it's always worked, it never fails, if the enemy can separate mom and dad, if he can break down the foundations of a home, if he can confuse who the Lord originally created a human being to be, male, female, he's got them.
Yeah.
He's got them. And they end up doing the things that we just saw, having the reprobate minds, not being able to see evil. Therefore, if you can't identify evil, you don't fight for it, or you don't fight against it.
You won't fight against it because you don't know what's evil.
You don't know.
Yeah, and they want that.
Well, and I was just going to say, so in 1950, 12% of children were born in the United States from broken homes, okay?
Wow.
12%. Y'all, in 1992, it had increased to 58%.
Right.
And that was in 1992.
Right.
Can you imagine? I mean, that is a drastic increase.
That's
And
what's
they're
happening.
after the families.
They're
After the identity. Because if they can come in and break up the family unit, if they can get you questioning who you are, then guess what? You aren't thinking about your maker who has created you for a purpose.
No.
You aren't thinking about I am intelligently designed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I really think it just boils down to conspiracy. If you really look at it and you understand the people that are running this country, they are purposely trying to dismantle what was built in this country, which was the nuclear family, the man, the wife, the children. You have children uprising against the parents. You have parents so confused that they don't know how to raise their kids, and they're letting the government in these schools raise the kids. And these, as we're seeing, and we just watched, you're seeing schools that are indoctrinating children to become immoral. And when you have an immoral, perverse society, you have a society that's on the brink of failure. And that is what these globalist elites want, because in order for them to resurrect a tyrannical system where everybody's enslaved, you have to break down independence.
You do.
You have to break down the spirit of men and women.
You got to stir confusion.
You have to stir confusion. It literally is spelled out in Saul Alinsky's book. He wrote a book called Rules for Radicals. And this book literally tells step by step how you dismantle Western society and you take over and become a communist dictatorship.
This guy right here, you know who his most faithful disciples were?
Barack Obama.
And Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton wrote her doctorate thesis on this man right here.
She sure did.
The social organizer. So did Barack Obama. So did Hitler.
Yeah. Yep. So you have to look at what is the agenda? How do they dismantle? And they did it to the nuclear black family. It was Lyndon B. Johnson in history that knew that the black family was strong in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, where you had the factory workers of the men, and they were bringing home a single income. The mothers were at home raising kids. They were raising them in the church world because the black community was very religious, very God-centered, very conservative. In fact, the Republican Party historically was founded by freed slaved men. Okay? And Lincoln was their icon because he freed them. So Lincoln was a Republican. Lincoln got shot by a Democrat. And I hate to go ahead and tell the truth on this, but there was no such thing as the Dixie switch. They
he doesn't
talk
hate
about
it. He loves it.
No, I do love the truth. I say that just to kind of politely preface what I'm about to dump on you.
It's just history.
It's history. There was no mythological Dixie switch where the Democrats flipped and the Republicans flipped, and now now the Republicans are actually the Democrats that
Right.
own slaves. It has always been the Democratic Party, the party of slavery. They went from plantations to now mental slavery. And they keep the black community, well, some of them, not all, because a lot of, I believe, our black brothers and sisters are literally waking up. We know a lot of
Yes, they are.
great conservative men and women of God that are coming out of that community, that school of thought where you have to keep voting based on your skin color.
Come on.
Their eyes are open.
But yeah, their eyes are wide open. So, but for those who are not, the Democratic Party historically has always been the party of slavery, and they have not changed. And here's how I know. Lyndon B. Johnson was a known racist. He was quoted as saying in the White House, "I will have these," and use the N-word, "voting Democrat until the day they die." He was also working with Martin Luther King because he came from that era, but he didn't like Martin Luther King. He thought he was a communist, and he had the CIA constantly monitoring Martin Luther King because God forbid black men stand up for their families and march on Washington. It scared the white power structure, the white racist Democrats of the day that ran the Capitol Hill. So you have Lyndon B. Johnson having meetings saying, "I'll have these people voting Democrat the rest of their life if I give them the welfare system." So he signed into law the welfare system, the Civil Rights Act, and he worked with who he called a communist, Martin Luther King, and then of course the CIA had Martin Luther King offed, a little pew-pewed, on that fateful day. Right? Because they didn't want the black power structure rising in America. Well, in doing so, and I listened to a lot of Candace Owens, and I've listened to a lot of black commentators, and I have a lot of conservative black friends in my circle that have all communicated what they have been educated on of the true history of America, and all of them concur that literally it started with Lyndon B. Johnson breaking down the family unit, where he removed the father figure from the home. He incentivized the black mother to actually take money from the government if the father wasn't in the home, okay? And then their kids were put into public schools once they started integrating schools, right? It's so funny. The same people, including Joe Biden, was a pro-segregationalist. He was friends with Strom Thurmond, who was for a lack of better words, a KKK member. A lack of better words. I'm not sure if he was a member, but I will tell you that he should have been. He was a strong segregationalist. We have Joe Biden, who hung out with Strom Thurmond, and he was for the segregation of schools, right? So these people have never really hid their true colors, but when it comes time for election, they lie and try to cover up their history, and they have the media, the fake news, that's able to cover up their history.
Well, not only that, they just use a tagline. So right now we're dealing with Kamala, who's claiming to be black. She ain't black.
You took it there.
She's Indian.
Yeah, she's Indian.
And so here's the thing. They only use it when they think it will benefit them.
Yeah.
And like you said, our black brothers and sisters, they are not dumb and they're smart.
They're
and
waking
their
up.
eyes are starting to open and they're wide open.
Yeah.
And I love the ones in our circle
Yeah.
who are strong
Yeah.
and loud
Yeah.
and proud and conservative, and it's just so beautiful
Well, look,
to
if you
watch.
look at with a spiritual set of eyes, it's all demonically charged. And here's the
Yes.
deal. From this playbook right here, the Saul Alinsky playbook, the number one strategy of his that they all use, the underlining strategy to get them to fall in line, or anybody to fall in line to operate in communism and socialism, if you can make someone believe they're a victim, you got them.
The victim mentality.
You got them.
Yeah.
If you can make someone believe that they're owed this, they were suffering because of this, because it's under somebody else's fault that you're in the condition that you're in, you got them.
Well, let's
that's the
continue-
whole play.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's continue on with after Lyndon B. Johnson. You see a lot of the industrial plants closed down near black neighborhoods. And so fathers were losing their income. They were losing their jobs.
Right.
And then you see the introduction after Lyndon B. Johnson with several other presidents, including Republican presidents, that were introducing drugs, using our government to put drugs, bringing them across the border,
Into the
working
neighborhoods.
with South American countries into those impoverished minority neighborhoods. And what was happening is if fathers couldn't get work, they were forced to do things that then the government would sweep in, give you the drugs, you would end up selling the drugs, and then they would lock you up because the prison complex is for profit. And so you have this system that is corroding the black family, and they're doing it to white communities too. It's not just the black communities, but black people have been an easy target since day one because they've been manipulated by the system and continue to be so.
And look at where they tend to plant the Planned Parenthoods. Not only are they taking and ripping apart the black family, but now they're taking life before life can even have a chance.
That's intentional.
Yeah.
That's intentional. Well, let's go about the history of that. Do you know the history of Planned Parenthood?
It was started.
Who is that lady?
Margaret Sanger.
Racist.
Yeah.
So she started this, I know this whole thing, I just couldn't remember her name, to snuff out the black community. It was originally her design. That was the whole reason.
Birth control. In the 1920s.
Birth control for the black. She felt like they were overpopulating, right? And that thing took off, and it was just, once again, here we go, same situation, different makeup, different makeup. They just put a different wig on it. And now we have, that is the only community that is literally just sacrificed year after year.
Oh, absolutely.
After year.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at Margaret Sanger and her history, she was married to a Grand Dragon Ku Klux Klan member. She was a known eugenicist, which obviously Hitler was a eugenicist.
Yes, he was.
And so he believed, back to Hitler believed that the Aryan race was the superior race, and any of the Aryan race that was sick should be disposed of. Anybody that was born, with Down syndrome or of any kind of detrimental disease should be snuffed out. But he also looked at black people, gays, and anybody else that wasn't perfectly white as being somebody that it should not be living.
That's right.
And so you see Margaret Sanger in history, in her writings, she quoted Hitler. She, to her white course, the people that were around in her circle, the wealthy people, she was writing this pamphlet, and she wrote one called the Negro Project. The Negro Project named black people as being literally subhuman. She used a term, and I don't even remember, I'd have to look it up, but she would refer to them as subhuman, and she said, we've got to figure out a way to get rid of them because she was threatened, and the people of her day were threatened that the black population was going to overproduce and rise up and take back power. And so she figured out, well, if we can start aborting their babies through a process called abortion, because that's literally when doctors started going into the womb, and that's when they fashioned that procedure in the 1920s and 30s, that they could get rid of the black population that at that time was growing so robust.
Isn't this interesting? Spiritually wise, my mind's just going crazy. The same spirit that always was is still here, because Pharaoh did the same thing. A Pharaoh that rose, that did not know Joseph, was afraid that the Israelites in Goshen were going to overtake his kingdom.
Absolutely.
So the same murderous spirit rose up in him, and it rose up in her. It's demonic.
Absolutely.
It's demonic, and yet we're talking about the history of Planned Parenthood, and yet they've evolved with the times. Did you know that now one of their biggest moneymakers is transitioning?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And so let's think about where we started this podcast.
Yeah.
We talked about the agenda in the school.
Yeah.
Well, Planned Parenthood is right there saying if you can't afford your baby, or if you want to transition at the age of 14, we got you.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to tell your parents.
In making it a law that they have the say, and parents don't have any more say.
Yeah.
So providing hormone therapy, offering gender affirming services, and transitioning. And so think about the enemy. He just evolves with the time. His agenda, he is clear on it.
Yep.
And we have got to eyes open. Eyes open.
What does Solomon say? There's nothing new
under the sun. These are the same spirits that are ancient. They haven't died. They don't die like humans. They exist, and they have always existed in the supernatural realm. And their agenda is to destroy mankind because they hate us, because they hate God. But when you look at the history of the destruction of the black family unit, and then you look in the 1900s, so they had just gotten out of slavery. They had just, the abolitionists had done their jobs. They had been freed. A lot of them were working jobs, and they were building wealth. We saw the rise of wealthy black business owners in the early 1900s all throughout the North, in Chicago and New York. And then, of course, we've all heard of Black Wall Street, which was burned to the ground. And so you see this powerful structure of amazing, incredible, talented, intellectual black people in the early 1900s that slowly get destroyed when Planned Parenthood started seeding in all of the different neighborhoods. And then slowly but surely black mothers started aborting their babies en
my
masse.
gosh.
And then when you came to Roe v. Wade, which was, I believe, in 1973, when that got passed into law, since Roe v. Wade got put up by the Supreme Court and has recently been overturned by the Supreme Court, thank you, Donald Trump, for doing that. Thank you, Supreme Court justices, for doing what was right. We have seen in America 73 million babies that have been aborted. And of that percentage, a majority of the 73 million babies are black babies.
This is an entire generation.
And yet black people only make up about 13 to 14% of the population.
Right.
So can you not see the intentional genocide that these evil Knievel like people that I believe are, and they are carrying it on. And for instance, Hillary Clinton was awarded at Planned Parenthood at the ceremony. She was given the Margaret Sanger Award and carried home a golden or brass bust of Margaret Sanger to put
Full
on
of
her
smiles.
bookshelf.
As if to be proud of that.
And in her speech, she said Margaret Sanger was her hero. And yet black women all over America supported Hillary Clinton. I mean, they would lay their lives down for Hillary Clinton. She was one of them. And yet here she is taking an award, the Margaret Sanger Award, a woman who was a known eugenicist whose main agenda was to snuff out black babies. I mean, the insanity in this country because of lack of education.
Wicked. Like, let's get all the way back to when we first started this. Remember, we were watching these women defend the immorality and the over-sexualization of our children.
Yeah.
And let's kick it back to going, it goes to that reprobate mind, number one. Number two, being ignorant of history.
Yeah.
Not reading,
Yes.
not knowing this man, Saul Alinsky, not knowing the people that have run this country and what they believe, right? All that it is ignorance. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means you don't know what you don't know.
Or you're in denial because
Amen.
the education's out there. I was self-taught. All I did was pick up the internet and start researching and reading and reading and reading. The history is there to find if you dig just a little bit. But I think people are too comfortable, whether they're white, black, Hispanic, or whatever in this country. We've gotten so comfortable in our ways that when a new school of thought or the truth comes out, it's almost like
total resistance.
Yeah, total resistance. It's that cognitive dissonance that, oh my God, I've voted this way for all my life, and my grandparents and my parents have voted this way. I got to keep voting. I got to keep up tradition, when in reality, tradition is killing you. It's killing you. So we are seeing this now in 2024 where people are starting to wake up, but not enough. I'm still shocked to see people of color or people in minorities still voting or still supporting Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton. They still show up and they applaud Hillary Clinton when she shows up. And now we have another protege, Kamala Harris, who is now placating that she is black because she happened to go to an HBCU when she has always been an Indian, a South Asian American, has always quoted, "I am Indian." She's on camera saying it multiple times. When she was sworn in as a senator, she brought her white husband and his family and her Indian family. There was nobody on that political backdrop that was black. And yet here she is placating once again to her followers, as she was just here in Atlanta and she was using what we call, dare I say, a black colloquialism way, a black slang. She was using black terminology, urban terminology, and it was almost offensive. It was offensive to every black woman that I spoke to and black man that are conservative. They were offended. They were like, "This is insane that this woman is doing blackface in front of us."
Vice President Harris, you need to get saved. You need to be saved.
You need to get a clue,
now.
honey. You
are so confused. You are so far out there. Who are you?
Who are you? Like, be an Indian American. Be proud of that. I would vote for you. Not really, but if you were honest,
be real.
Just be real.
Yes.
Just be real. But see, Democrats will always placate for the vote. They've been doing that since the Confederate days. They have always gone after the people that they're political. They're political.
Whatever
they're
it
politicians.
Takes.
Whatever
Lie,
it takes.
Manipulate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing this play out. I thought after Obama that the communities would wake up and say, hey, you know what? We got duped. I voted for Obama the first time around, and I'm a Republican. I come from the Reagan Republicans, but I was sick of the Bush dynasty. I'll be honest. I voted the first time for Obama because I thought maybe he'll bring change. I didn't care for the Democrats. I wasn't completely awakened to what was going on in society at the time, and I was living in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, I come from the lineage of my daddy voted for George Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush, but after the 9/11, it was just like, I can't vote for this dynasty again, these rhinos. So I literally voted for Obama. But second time around, I was like, okay, we're not voting for him. And I awakened to what was going on. I saw what they were pushing, and I saw what they were pushing not only in the black communities, but how they were just placating to every different subdivision of humanity.
It's sickening. It makes me want to puke.
Yeah, it's
just
horrible.
so desperate.
It's horrible. So here we are with our kids, and I just talked about how the history, a little bit of the history of, and we will have on, stay tuned, we will have more people on, more guests that will speak more eloquently to this point about the black community, people that actually know more than I do. But the little tidbits that I've given you today is just, we have got to rise up as individuals, as parents, as people that are conservative, and realize that we are the majority, that we cannot allow schools to indoctrinate our children. Yeah. We cannot continue to allow our friends, our family members, and even those that we go to church with be indoctrinated or stay in a delusional state where we just keep marching in line to the gas chambers.
That's what it is. What's your solution? What do you think the solution is?
Well,
Amber?
I was actually just thinking of the people who are listening to this or watching this, and they may hear, the collaborative verbiage and the things that we have trapped in our brains. And here's the thing. You don't have to know everything that we know, but you can share this with somebody.
Share it.
Because just sharing these pieces, these podcasts, it will wake people up.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're here to do, is make sure that eyes are open. New mindsets are just here to stay, and voices are getting louder to be heard.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't have to agree with 100% of everything, right? But we can all agree that it's just not right.
Something's got to change.
It's got to change.
It's got to change.
It's not right. It's demonically charged. But to put your finger on exactly what it is going to take a community.
Yeah.
It's time to wake up.
Yeah. Make your voice heard. And make sure before you start screaming in the streets and before you start marching in the streets that you're educated on the topic for which you are marching. Don't be one of those people that just goes along with the herd mentality. That is what this is all about, is wake up, realize your power, realize who you are, who God created you to be, take back your freedom, and stand for what is truthful.
That's right.
And that's where we'll leave it. We'll see you soon.
Can't wait.